welcome to On Trial, starring Mark Radulich, also starring Sean Comer. Hope you're ready, Hollywood, because you're on trial.
All rise. Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Dredd presiding. This is On Trial. I am your prosecuting attorney tonight, Mr. Mark Radulich, and up for murder in the first of cinema, ladies and gentlemen.
Attempted murder.
Halloween Resurrection, a 2002 American slasher film directed by Rick Rosenthal, who also directed Halloween 2. It stars Busta Rhymes, Bianca Kajlich, Thomas Ian Nicholas, Ryan Merriman, Sean Patrick Thomas, Tyra Banks from Battleship fame, and the returning Jamie Lee Curtis for a hot 5 minutes. And we're doing this tonight because it's Halloween week all week long. This week, this Friday coming up, depending on when you're listening to this, is Halloween Kills, which is day and date on Peacock and in theaters. So we're looking at all the old, the new, the blue Halloween stuff here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. Defending this turkey, pro bono, I understand, because how could you possibly take money for it? Ladies and gentlemen, Sean Comer, how do you do, sir?
You know that one friend you have that will sometimes just make a really great point and then ruin it entirely by just continuing for another few sentences that destroys the credibility of everything they just said? Okay, that is Halloween Resurrection.
No, I'm picking up what you're putting down, sure. This starts strong. And then both literally and metaphorically goes off the roof into a ditch.
Believe it or not, it has its strong points. It does. Well, correction.
Okay.
It has a.
There's there's a strong screenplay here. It's not acted well. It's not directed well. It's not edited well. But the screenplay, the idea of this, is sound. The idea of, hey, we're gonna play in a serial killer's house for the early days of internet ratings. Like, that's actually a fun idea. It was just executed. This was executed Daffy Duck style, where he said, "Shoot him, you slop artist, not me," and shot itself in the face. But go on, sir.
I think it's closer to the truth to say that this could have been a serviceable entry in the series had it not been juxtaposed immediately after the superb ending of Halloween H20.
So real quick, because and you just set me up perfectly for it. So I had never seen a Halloween movie before I saw this one, and this was not my first viewing.
Oh no, you're kidding!
No,
This was your very first Halloween?
So picture it, Sicily, 2002, right?
Oh, Mark, poor baby.
So I'm in grad school, and I think I just moved back to New York around this time. It was within the first year, and all the friends I'm hanging out with are all like movie buffs and cinema snobs, right? Because that's what I'm doing in college. And you know me, big sissy pants, didn't grow up watching horror movies, didn't like it, so I avoided a lot of them, and I'd never seen any of the Halloween movies. And then this thing comes out July 12th, 2002, and all my movie friends be like, we got to go see the new Halloween movie. We've seen them all up to this point. And I'm like, am I going to get lost? I haven't seen any of these before. And for all I knew, Halloween Resurrection, which I believe is the eighth movie in this series. Yep. I'm like, am I going to know what's going to happen? They're like, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. I'm like, okay.
Oh, boy.
So yeah, I didn't. And so when I pitched this to you to do, and like 8 years ago, to line up with Halloween Kills, you got to understand, and this is what I want you to talk about. I had never seen H20. I didn't realize that H20 was the spiritual sequel to, I guess, the original Halloween. Every chart that I've seen has, like, Halloween, I think 78 or 81, I can't remember what year it is, 78. It goes Halloween 78 to H2O to Resurrection. Or is it 2 to H2O then Resurrection? Which one is it?
Okay, so let's briefly go over the history of Halloween reboots and retcons.
Yes, please.
And when I say brief, I mean we will do this briefly. The first two movies initially were meant to be, the two halves of The Night He Came Home.
Okay.
Act 1 and 2 of a 2-act story. You have Halloween 3, which was the attempt to turn the franchise into an anthology series, not all of which would feature Michael Myers.
Which we talked about in
the outcry. Yeah. The outcry was so massive that everybody wanted Michael Myers back that we then got the Of Michael Myers trilogy,
right,
of 4, 5, and 6, that introduced Danielle Harris as Laurie Strode's long-lost daughter. Halloween H2O then retcons 3 through 6 right out of continuity and is meant to be a direct sequel to Halloween 2, because at the time, in the established continuity in canon, 2 was obviously the direct sequel.
Right.
Halloween H2O reintroduces Laurie Strode, now living in hiding, in anonymity, and in the back of her mind, perpetually terrified of her brother. Halloween Resurrection would be the direct sequel to Halloween H2O.
Got it.
And after H2O, or after Resurrection, which flopped so spectacularly it should be clinically studied, we got the 2-movie Rob Zombie attempt at a reboot, which was almost a trilogy. And then down the road, we got 2018, which wipes everything after the first movie out of continuity.
Right.
It didn't happen. It is struck from the record. And then supposedly, now that that's the case, the proper official canon of Halloween was continued with Halloween 2018. It will be continued with Halloween Kills, and the Ballad of Laurie Strode, yes, will have the curtain brought down on it supposedly once and for all with Halloween Ends.
Until we do this and all next year with Halloween 10, The Search for More Money. Okay, cool. Thank you for straightening that out. So to drive this home, and then we can get into some more notes here if you need to. Yeah, I've never seen H2O. I've heard it's really good. And I would not. And so the whole thing was, when I pitched you Halloween Resurrection, it was because it was the first Halloween movie I'd ever seen, and I remember laughing so hard at it because Busta Rhymes is so terrible, and the editing in this movie was so laughably bad. That was all I would talk about when the movie was over. Like, I remember having like a soda snort through my nose, good time, laughing at this piece of shit. Then I'm like, I must talk about this with Sean. I must unburden myself of this thing. And had I known that it was the sequel to H2O and that they were, they really are better enjoyed as a pair than obviously just watching Resurrection by itself, I would have done that first. But your notes, sir.
Okay, so pretty cut and dried. To thank for this movie even existing, you would have to pay homage to the late Mustafa Akkad. He was the super producer who, after Halloween, held the pretty much lock, stock, and barrel rights to the franchise. And if I recall correctly, part of his official binding agreement with everyone that he allowed to helm a Halloween sequel was Michael Myers cannot be definitively killed off. He would not allow it. It's kind of a trope among slasher franchises these days, but to the best of my knowledge, and I could be wrong here, he's the only one where it was officially right there, pretty much in black and white. It was an edict. And so, at the end of Halloween H20, which, and this is your one warning, because I think rather highly of H20, and I think it's absolutely worth watching. I'm about to spoil the end of it. So, if you want to, go, duck away, watch it however you need to, come on back when you're ready. Okay, anyway, now that we've cleared out the punters, at the end, Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis, beheads her brother in the climax, seemingly killing him definitively. The way that was shot was because, and my hat's off to Dead Meat, in my opinion, the gold standard of horror-centric YouTube channels, for pointing this out. Screenwriter Kevin Williamson, of course, he of Scream and The Faculty fame, concocted this ending, this shot, so that the door could be left open to make what would become Halloween Resurrection. And of course, that's because at the start of Resurrection, we get the explanation that Laurie thought she was beheading her brother, because in reality, Michael had crushed the larynx of a paramedic so that he couldn't speak, dolled him up in his signature garb, and pulled the old Hannibal Lecter-esque switcheroo on him. So that during that shot, when you see Michael acting, uncharacteristically panicky, it's because there's an innocent man underneath that bleached Shatner mask and those coveralls who's trying to get away. No, stop, you fool. Before, heads go a-rolling. And so, as a result, they had an out to make Resurrection. It's my understanding that Jamie Lee agreed to come back under one condition and one condition only. That they kill Laurie early. That this was it. That this was Laurie's last bow in the series. I guess what changed her mind was actually eventually getting somebody on board who could treat the first movie and John Carpenter's legacy with the respect it deserved, and gave them an actual compelling way to bring Laurie back into the fold without having to reconcile, retcon, and otherwise explain away the absolute train wreck of continuity that erupted after Halloween 2. And as a result, as I said, this thing, it made its budget back. In fact, it made double its budget, $15 million budget, grossed $37.6 million at the box office. But it got absolutely hammered from every possible angle, critically and from fans. So much so that, Halloween as we knew it ended it there. Rob Zombie got a couple of at-bats, and then Danny McBride, of all unlikely people, was one of the folks who went, wait a second, got me an idea. And Lord only knows. And of course, tragically, Akkad was killed in a terrorist bombing a number of years ago, along with his wife. And the rights have been held for some time by his son. And time will tell if that's still a thing, that it's in the infallible word of God that Michael absolutely cannot die. But just between you, me, and the airwaves, I'm I'm kind of hoping that Halloween Ends is it.
Ends.
This
definitively ends.
Yeah, well, yeah, because I was blown away with how much I loved Halloween 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And Halloween Kills, the trailer points to a premise that certainly has me chuffed to see where they're going with this. But after that, it really feels like, as far as the mainline continuity goes, this should be hopefully all anyone has to say before we have to tread water and grasp at straws any further.
All right, so the plot of this thing, such as it is, Sean alluded to some of it here, but as he said, Laurie Strode is guilt-ridden and traumatized at a psychiatric facility, inpatient, where she's selectively mute and seeking her meds and having all kinds of difficulties. And she is awaiting the return of Michael Myers, which he does not disappoint her. He shows up at the hospital, but she sets a trap for him, and she goes to behead him, but she's so anxious and trepidatious about the whole thing, timid even, because she does not want to do the same thing she did before, which was allegedly decapitate the wrong person. She takes forever trying to get the mask off of him to double check, and at which point he, like the Undertaker, arises from his predicament and throws her off the roof after a scuffle. We then move on to October 31st, 2001. Michael has been hiding for 3 years in a cave like a bear or something. He reemerges to attempt to murder Laurie again, who's moving on. A year later, there we are. A year later, college students Sarah Moyer, Bill Woodlake, Donna Chang, Jen Danzig, who played by the lovely, doing her best she can, Katie Sackhoff, Jim Morgan, and Rudy Grimes win a competition to appear on an internet reality show called Dangertainment. Danger! That's a different guy. Directed by Freddie Harris, who is played by higher learning star Busta Rhymes. And Nora Winston, played by Tyra Banks, in which they have to spend a night in Michael's abandoned childhood house in order to figure out what led him to all the killings. However, while setting up cameras throughout the house in preparation for the show, cameraman Charlie is killed by Michael, who has returned to Haddonfield. On Halloween night, equipped with head cameras, Sarah, Bill, Donna, Jen, Jim, and Rudy enter the house and separate into 3 groups to search for clues. While Sarah's messaging friend Deckard watches the live broadcast during a party. During the search, Michael suddenly appears and kills Bill. Kill Bill. Donna and Jim discover a wall filled with fake corpses and realize that the show is a setup. You're a phony, a big fat phony, before the former is killed by Michael. At the party, Decker and other partygoers witness the murder, but only Deckard realizes that it was real. Meanwhile, back in the city, Freddy enters the house dressed as Michael in order to scare the competitors and is followed by the real Michael, dun dun dun, whom he mistakes for Charlie. When Rudy, Sarah, and Jim find Freddy in Michael's costume, he reveals the scheme to them and begs them to cooperate, telling them they will all be paid well if the show works out. Famous last words. After Freddy leaves, the trio decides to gather up the rest of their friends and leave. Jen discovers Bill's corpse and Michael decapitates her, like you do, in front of Rudy, Sarah, and Jim, who soon realize that it isn't Freddy. Haha. Michael proceeds to kill Jim and Rudy and George and Donna and Blitzen and everybody. It just kills them all before chasing Sarah upstairs. Sarah, your final girl. Dun dun dun. Locking herself in a bedroom, Sarah begs for Deckard to help her. As the other partygoers realize that all the murders were real, Deckard begins to send messages to Sarah on Michael's location to help her avoid him. Sarah runs into Freddy just as Michael finds them and stabs the latter. Sarah runs into the tunnels and finds an exit leading to the garage, where she discovers Nora's body. Michael again arrives and attacks Sarah, but a still living Freddy finds them and fights Michael as an electrical fire starts in the garage. After
Busta Rhymes' character being named Freddy is just creating just a wave of confusion in my horror brain right now.
I feel like they just should have just named him, just left him as Busta Rhymes. Busta Rhymes as himself, because We'll get to that momentarily. Sarah thanks Deckard for saving her life. Meanwhile, Michael is presumed dead, because of course he is, and the body is taken to the morgue. However, as the coroner prepares to examine his body, Michael suddenly awakens. Death clock. All right. I would like to submit into evidence the following, if it pleases the court. Exhibit A. Trick or treat, motherfucker. Let the dangetainment begin up in this motherfucker. Whoa. Shit, man. Charlie, where the fuck you been, man? Don't you know we've been looking all over this motherfucker for you? And why the hell you dressed like me anyway? I'm not paying you to be Michael Myers. I'm so glad we're not doing video. I'm playing Michael Myers. And if them kids around see us dressed up in the same shit, it's going to ruin the whole effect. God damn it. What the hell is wrong with you? I'm going to wake one of my kids up. I said, what are you looking at me like that for? Huh? You don't get it. You don't get it. Your shit up there ain't working or something. Huh? You need to get your ass back in the garage with Nora. That's your job. Go back in there and help her ass out. That's not my job, asshole. My job's not to help your fucking ass out. Wait, that's Ice-T. Sorry, wrong thing. Go do your job. I left the back door unlocked for your ass to go out the back and into the garage. That's what I did. I did that. Well, that's how you're learning. You need to get the hell out of here. Gone. Scoot. Skedaddle. Get the fuck out of Dodge. God damn it. What the hell does somebody got to do to get a little help in this motherfucker? Looking a little crispy over there, Mikey. Like some chicken fried motherfucker. Well, may he never, ever rest in peace. Michael Myers is a killer shark in baggy-ass overalls who gets his kicks from killing everybody up in this motherfucker. Wait, everybody and everything he comes across. All right, I'll stop ad-libbing. Hey, Mikey, happy fucking Halloween! Let's see what you got. Fear, don't you understand, is good, as is greed. Fear is what gives us the feeling of being alive, don't you understand? Kick his ass! Kick his ass! Kick his ass! Jerry! Who's better than Wat Chun-Li whooping everybody's ass while he's smoking a cigarette? Oh, shit.
Canyon.
Oh, shit. Who's knocking on my door this late? Whoever this is distracting me from seeing Wat Chun-Li whoop some ass.
Wat Chun-Li.
What do you mean you don't want to be famous? That's the American dream. You hit me like I murdered your mother, like I murdered your fucking mother or something. I really am tempted to say prosecution rest, but I'll actually say something about the movie now.
Devon Dudley sounding bitch.
So I believe that I'm pretty clear about the performances in this movie, starting with Mr. Rhymes. He's not that. Here's the thing. I've actually seen Busta Rhymes in a couple of different things. He was okay in Higher Learning. He's definitely held up by Ice Cube in that movie, and he's the brother in Finding Forrester. And he has one of the. And I actually quote this on an ongoing basis. In terms of discussing socio-political things, especially with relation to the black community. He has this line in Finding Forrester that's really great, and it's really delivered well. They only let you go so far before they make you stop, or however the last part of that goes. In any case, so Busta Rhymes, this isn't entirely his fault.
He was also I would also point out he was also damn decent in Def Jam Fight in New
York. I believe you. I've never seen it. So anyway, this guy directed Bad Boys with Sean Penn, and I remember watching that as a kid and thinking it was okay. It's been a long time, but there's not a whole lot else on his resume where, he directed Halloween 2, and for the life of me, I couldn't tell you what we said about that movie. My point being, I feel like, as I said at the top of the show, and this is pretty much what I have to say about this movie. I think there's strong bones of an idea here of playing in a haunted house with a serial killer, and everyone's strapped up with cameras. I think this was actually kind of ahead of its time, because you could absolutely make this movie now and it won't feel dated. The technology would be different. Technology would, you wouldn't have whatever gizmo she's got there. I can't remember the name of them. The sort of predecessor to the cell phone. But and the cameras would all be different and everything. It would look a lot slicker. And Deckard's use of the internet would be different. But all in all, you could make this movie now, and it would be contemporary. So I like the idea of the movie. The fact that they have to kind of shoehorn the Laurie Strode, Michael Myers stuff in takes away from it, actually. Like, the stuff with Michael Myers and Laurie Strode feels like a different movie, to the point where it's really jarring, and they don't really connect. Because here's the thing, if you're going to spend 10 to 15 minutes setting up Laurie Strode's death, it has to somehow affect the rest of the movie, and it doesn't. It's literally like, if you'll recall, if you go back in the archives and listen to myself and Robert Winfrey talk about the Desolation of Smog and the Battle of the Five Armies, and other people have made this same criticism. In fact, we might have even talked about it on The Long Road to Ruin. The Battle of the Five Armies begins with the end of the Desolation of Smog. It's the end of one movie, and then the new movie starts 20 minutes in, which is not great film structure. You can do it, and your mileage may vary about how successful it comes across, but it's not great. It's not a great way to do a film, and that's the problem. That's one of the basic problems I have with this one, is the film structure. The rest of it is, Katie Sackhoff, who's great as Bo-Katan. Everyone loves her, blah, blah, yakety schmack. And everyone, she's everyone's dream girl who's a sci-fi nerd from Battlestar Galactica. And she is probably the best performer in this thing, but because she's playing a bubbly idiot. So, she does it well. She's an outstanding bubbly idiot in this thing, and she's kind of the only one that has any near approachable, a believable character. But again, what they give her to do is not great. She kind of reminds me of Rose McGowan from the first Scream movie. She's kind of just there to look hot and get killed. The rest of the cast sucks, including our lead girl here. Bianca Kajlich. I'm not sure what else she's been in as Sarah Moyer. I'd have to look it up real quick. But whatever else she's been in, she's not great in this, and I don't think that's her fault, because as I look at her credits, it seems like she's gotten some pretty decent projects and a lot of work. So I would put this on the director. I don't know if there just wasn't timing, if this was sort of just a cash grab, or there just wasn't time and energy put into this, or or it's one of those, and I don't know if Sean wants to talk about this or not when it's his opportunity, but sometimes I feel like people making horror movies don't take the horror genre seriously. They know these things are cheaply made and make shit tons of money, so and they know it's broad-based entertainment for a wide audience, so they don't put a tremendous amount of thought into it more often than not, because it takes so little for these things to entertain so many people and make shit tons of money. And I feel like while H2O allegedly was an outstanding movie and beloved by Halloween fans, this one was like, quick, let's get this one out there too, so that we can capitalize on it. And I don't feel like there was a lot of time and care put into the production. The thing that I remember, and having rewatched it, I was really looking for this. There was some slipshod editing in this thing. Like, it's really bad at times, to the point where it almost takes you out of the movie. And it's not like Batman v Superman editing, where everything's just rapidly firing at your, the irises in your eyes, where you're like, Clockwork Orange. It's just more like stuff's out of focus, things are weird angles, and it's not like horror weird angles, it's just badly shot weird angles. The kills in this thing are not particularly inventive, and a lot of them are not interesting at all, which, if you've got nothing else in a horror movie, you should at least have good kills. And that's sort of the rumor mill on this new one, Halloween Kills, is the best thing about it is that the slaughter that happens in this movie is beautiful. And when in this one, it was just kind of meh, for a creepy haunted house, they don't make a tremendous amount of use of it. I feel like they were just like, it's kind of like if you're doing like a state fair haunted house, like, throw some dirt on that. Well, some cobwebs, it'll be fine. You know, like the setting just isn't like appealing or scary in any way. And I think that's the last thing I want to say about this, and I'll submit to concede to Sean here. Is it just feels like it feels like lost my train of thought. Go ahead, Sean. The prosecution for now rests. Like I had it there for a moment, and the rainbow wheel started to spin, and I lost it. And I'm like, I'm not going to hold up the show for this. If I figure it out, if I remember what it was I was going to say, I'll blurt it out later.
After that initial screed, goddamn, you killed me laughing so hard.
You're welcome.
I could about choke you for nearly absolutely pennying the track that my train of thought was running on. So I guess leading off with that, I would say that the scene with Busta and Michael when Busta's in costume, it's absolutely hysterical the way Busta just erupts and starts breaking his balls. And then Michael just silently just actually fucks off. Instead of going full Voorhees and just rage decapitating him on the spot, it just drops the mic and just walks away. He actually takes the L. Just genuinely one of the most entertaining moments in the entire fucking movie. But as far as what the movie does well, believe it or not, I was surprised to realize just how well this could realistically stand on its own if it wanted to. You could feasibly, again, I don't recommend this because H2O is absolutely worth a watch, but you could watch Halloween, which I believe everybody should watch at least once, if only because it's one of the smartest slashers ever made in just about every sense. You could watch Halloween 2, which, while inferior to the first, is still, as sequels go, really pretty good. It's sound. I don't believe it deserves to go down as a classic, but I can't imagine watching that and actually feeling like you want that 2 hours of your life back. But then you could do that, and then if you wanted to, you could skip everything else and go straight to this movie, and nothing would really feel entirely like it had been lost, except for the fact that opening sequence might make you curious to check out Halloween H20. But as far as being able to actually follow the story, you would be just fine. So I guess if you gotta pick up the sequel somewhere, and for some reason or other you can't watch H2O, at least you won't be confused for whatever that's worth. You mentioned the kills, and I beg to differ. I think for the most part they're pretty sound. Not the best in the series, but they live up to roughly what we've come to expect from Michael Myers at this point, especially the rampage through the mental institution. But we don't get anything where it feels like some kind of jarring shift in character. You mentioned the technology and kind of that conceit, and it does feel dated. It really does. I think there are other ways you could have done a haunted house movie where you have something like, you could have like a haunted house tour where everybody is locked in with Michael in one location. Hang on one second. Oh, excuse me.
God bless you.
Pardon me. Thank you. Oh, didn't see that one coming. And that way you could kind of get around the fact that a lot of this movie is anybody who was immersed in online culture around that time just kind of can't help but look at this and just shake their heads going, oh, so much of this does not work that way. But I will also kind of give it credit for being a bit ahead of the curve in kind of falling ass backwards into accidentally predicting the boom in live streaming and online entertainment. It might get the finer details wrong, but in terms of acknowledging the possibilities, I mean, I can't hate them for that.
Anyway, so
they're just, you're gonna have to forgive me. There's really not much good to talk about here with this one. I'm reaching a little bit. The score, if you ruled out what I think is just what feels like jarringly out of place hip hop, it's a score that certainly does right by the creepier synth aesthetics of the first two movies, especially. So, I mean, that part's certainly enjoyable. I give Kevin Williamson a world of credit for when Jamie Lee Curtis was initially adamant about not wanting to return for another movie, concocting this and kind of brokering sort of an agreement with her that they would come up with this ending, shoot it at the very end of the shoot for Halloween 2, and then absolutely keep the big reveal footage an absolute secret until this was announced. That was some smooth maneuvering on his part to get her to come back for just kind of a scant few minutes of screen time in the opening frame. But in a way, it's a good thing that this fell on its face, because it really needed to, in order to convince everybody involved that it was time to move on. And if you're really insistent on keeping this franchise alive, you have to go in a different direction. And from here, we got the two zombie movies, which your mileage may vary. Because in all honesty, there's positives about it, as I've mentioned before. But to kind of shift gears a little bit before I throw it back to you, I think one of the biggest problems with this is, at this point, it's a series that had forgotten where it came from. It had forgotten how to get its scares with really smart shots and pacing and tone and crafting likable characters and being careful about when and how you make a full reveal of Mike. Because the first one, again, it doesn't get credit for how cleverly it really played on suburban fears. I even heard one reading of it recently. I was listening to a very old episode of You're Wrong About, where they delved a little bit into briefly talking about how there was, one of the reasons why so many slasher movies are themed after killing babysitters and irresponsible babysitters is this notion that women being able to just up and just leave kids with seemingly this complete unknown stranger was taking away from just staying home and being happy, docile little homemakers. And so if you have these movies where babysitters are just being stalked and killed en masse, it's kind of a subtle little way of seeing, you see, if you want your kids taken care of, you got to do it yourself, because look what happens if you leave them in someone else's care. And by this point, we're so well past anything that can kind of make these movies both feel timeless and seem like they're tapping into the same psychological things that the likes of real horror masters like John Carpenter and Wes Craven and Tobe Hooper all were. Jeremy Thomas is going to crucify me if I get this wrong. I never know if it's pronounced Toby or Tobe. I think it's Toby. So Jeremy, if you're listening to this, please, I apologize. It is not my intention to besmirch the good name of Hooptober. But moving on, and maybe this will even play into anything you're about to say. The other part of the problem is you don't necessarily even have true characters in this movie. You just kind of have varying shades of meat sack. You don't. Nobody in this movie really inspires any kind of investment. I mean, I watched the 2009 Friday the 13th remake just about a week ago, and I watched it again just a few days ago with Anne. And one of the things that struck me is being surprised at how each of the young people in that movie, for the most part, even the unlikable ones, you at least feel something in regards of, I cannot wait to see how you die, and I like you. I'm kind of sorry to know what's about to happen. I never really feel that. Because it's like you have a bunch of students and they're trying to substitute their majors for personalities. and it doesn't work that way. Like, I'm thinking in particular, Sean Patrick Thomas. He's in a culinary program. Is it
him yelling, "You need more protein in your diet," as he's throwing fucking spices and food at Michael Myers? Legitimately dumb as shit, but it legitimately made me. And that is actually a brilliant example of the point you're making. I'm the food guy, so food, and all of my things will be food related. Like I'm a mid-90s WWF gimmick.
Oh dear God, get out of my head! That was the comparison I was about to make. I was gonna say, it was like when Vince McMahon back in the early '90s confused wrestling plumber for an actual character. Wrestling garbage man is not a character. Wrestling clown, that's the exception. That's the exception. Heel Doink was the fucking man. Wrestling hockey player. That's not a character. Wrestling baseball player. That's not a character. Those are just costumes. In this, culinary student stuck in the Myers house, flinging spices at Michael Myers. That's not a character. That's wearing his occupation as a costume. And unfortunately, that's about as far as the movie goes in terms of depth. And that's why I really can't God, as terrible as the writing is, I've learned in these movies and in a lot of horror movies to differentiate between bad acting and bad writing, because they're not always the same thing. I've talked at length before about how much I hate the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Jackie Earle Haley's performance as Freddy Krueger was not bad. Quite the opposite. It was really pretty damn good, better than expected. And I think if he'd gotten another movie with a better script to work with, he could have possibly been right up there with Robert Englund. Maybe not equaling him, but at least somewhat doing him justice. Busta is the only one who seems to be bringing some energy and character to his part, to where you actually start to look forward to having him on screen. Unfortunately, he's just given absolute dreck to work with the exception of that one scene.
I wanted to throw this out.
Just take it away and take us home.
The thing that I was thinking about, at least that I can recall, I'm so tired, is I was talking about the lead girl, and with a lot of horror monsters, and I think you would know this better than I would, but with a lot of horror monsters, they seem to be forces of nature, and it's about your final girl, your lead, your star, and how relatable they are, and are they somebody who you want to see survive the night? That is, I think, a pretty firm structure for what a lot of horror is built on. It's certainly what makes the initial Halloween work, is that you have the anxiety of this, completely at the mercy of this killer, teen girl dealing with this thing. Nancy in The Nightmare on Elm Street. There's a psychological bent, and you get to know Nancy. Is the point that I'm getting at. You get to know Laurie. You get to know Nev Campbell's character in Scream. You get to know them as people before the massacres start happening. You may not get to know who the players, the friends of the lead, but it certainly helps if you do. But if they're just written as meat sacks, all that really then matters is your lead. And if your lead is relatable, if your lead is something with some stuff going on, then then we can get to the kills. And I think the problem, the biggest failing of this movie in terms of writing, is that they gave nothing to this person. But here's the thing: Bianca Kajlich is Sarah Moyer. Sarah is presented to you as somebody who is psychologically damaged, and she certainly does her level best to portray that throughout the film, but you never, to my recollection, you never got a real sense of why she's that way. Why, of all the people and all the haunted houses in all the world, did it have to be her in this one? Why is this day different for this gal than the rest, besides the existential terror of this zombie coming after you? The movie never really deals with it. It's just, it's kind of like what you were saying. It's painting with very, very broad strokes. It's like, here's your goofball, here's your sex kitten, here's your lusterer, and here's your comic relief, and here's your lead girl. Go. And like, okay, but that's really flat, uninteresting writing. And I don't really care if she survives the night now. She drew the best straw in this particular occasion. She gets to live to the end. But that's it. That's really the only thing I have to say, is that a couple of more passes through editing and a little bit more care about what we're doing here. And I think you actually might have something that works, but it just feels rushed, when that nobody. It almost feels like a mockbuster, Sean. It feels like somebody who's doing a parody of a Halloween film. Where if you cut the first 20 minutes out and you just start off with the kids in the college and Busta Rhymes and say, hey, there was this serial killer, we're going to go into his house, and then he shows up. There's a case to be made for this is a movie in the Halloween-like genre, but isn't really Halloween. and it kind of just feels like Ronnie and I talked about this with Jolt, that's currently on Amazon Prime, that there are some movies that are made just to have a tape on a video store or video rental shelf, or in modern parlance, just to be put on a streaming service. And that's kind of what this feels like. If it didn't have the name Halloween slapped on there, I don't even think you'd know this thing existed, except for Saturday night you rented some shit ass movie you saw in the video, in the rental store on the shelf, or if you found scrolling through Netflix.
Well, of course. Look at the last two Hellraiser movies. That's exactly what those are.
I can't. I've never seen them, but you can certainly talk to me about it.
Oh, yeah, but that's exactly my point. Is for years Dimension cranked out these, by and large, notoriously horrendous Hellraiser sequels after the first three.
They're like Hellraiser in name only, right?
Well, I mean, they were Hellraiser in that they followed that concept, but in terms of quality, the last two especially, it was so evident that they were just throwing something together so that they can hold on to the rights. Mm-hmm. But then what you get every so often, one of those reasons for kind of a beacon of hope is occasionally some good fortune turns for a franchise and you get the right people involved who have the right abiding, genuine love for it. And you end up with something truly special. It's why I'm so hyped for the Hellraiser movie and series that are on the way. I'm so happy that Don Mancini is getting a chance to continue to follow up on the last two superb Child's Play sequels and get to continue that story that he wove with the Chucky series. And for a really kind of amusing example, Friday the 13th, we haven't had an official entry in years because the rights, up until about a week ago, have been caught up in this tense legal struggle between director-producer Sean Cunningham and Victor Miller, who wrote the original script. But in the meantime, we have gotten two astoundingly good fan films, Never Hike Alone and Never Hike in the Snow. Both of them available completely free of charge to watch on YouTube. And every time I've watched them, and I've watched them a couple of times, I always just can't help but start to salivate at the idea of, man, I would love to see what these folks could do with an actual budget. If this is what they're turning out with just what they can do for right now with what resources they have, man alive. Imagine if Paramount or New Line or any other studio were to really get behind them and throw them the kind of money, even in terms of what Halloween 2018 got. Man, now that would be the franchise revival that I think everybody's been hoping for. And I mean, I feel like we kind of lucked out with Halloween. I mean, especially after this, arguably the low point of the entire franchise, to have gotten 2018 and Halloween Kills, and soon after that Halloween Ends. It feels like Edge getting cleared from his broken neck and getting to come back and have this last couple of years to, as he so often put it, end his career on his terms. This feels like the franchise going out the way it always should have, instead of just on an absolute belly flop into a sewage tank like this.
All right, folks, I think that wraps up our review here of Halloween Resurrection. I did this one for fun. at some point I actually need to sit down and watch H2O. I'm actually wondering if I have seen it. I feel like I might have, but I don't know. It doesn't matter. In any case, the next time,
Mark, you know what? Well, hang on, because I got an idea. Just one to maybe tuck away in the back of your mind. I don't know if we could do this because I don't know if copyright and whatnot would allow it. But you know how you so often do the boxing alternate commentaries?
Did one last night for Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder 3. Yes.
I noticed. What if we were to do something like this with introducing you to some of these horror franchises that maybe you've missed out on over the years, and like anything you've been just slightly curious to check out, like maybe starting with the original Halloween.
That I've seen, and Ronnie and I are reviewing it on Thursday. But I like your idea. I think in general, we've what's happened in the past. So just to give you an example, like the Babadook. For years, Winfrey teased me about it and was like, "You can't handle the Babadook," and I'm like, "I'm really sick of you saying that. We're going to review the Babadook now. I'm fucking tired of this conversation." And we had a good conversation. I always have good conversations with Winfrey when he's not in a terrible mood. So there have definitely been people who have pitched me, you should watch this and we should talk about it. You should watch that and we should talk about it. I'm open to either. I'm open to doing an alternative commentary first watch. I did that. Actually, I did that to Robert Winfrey. I made him watch the Kentucky Fried Movie and we talked about it. We just watched it together and then I quick turned on the recorder and then we talked about it. It's kind of like an initial reaction, like no time to process it kind of a thing. So yeah, any one of those formats, that's something we can talk about and figure out a day to do that. But what is on the schedule is the next on trial will be Donnie Darko. And this one was at Sean's request. He was like, when we were talking about Spun and we were just kind of thinking about the late 90s, early 2000s indie snobbery that's out there, and the one that everyone sort of points to besides Run Lola Run is Donnie Darko, and Sean flipped the table over and said, enough of this shit. We're putting Donnie Darko on trial, so we are. And that'll be... And
my man, the window is closing, but you still have room to back out.
So we will do that. It's actually the 20th.
I know what hunts you.
It's the 20th anniversary, 20-year anniversary of Donnie Darko, so we're going to do that in time for that. So we'll record it on the 25th. It'll air the next day on the 26th, which I believe is when the actual anniversary is. And I think that's it for the month of October. As far as Halloween stuff this week, or actually tomorrow night, late tomorrow night, myself, Ben Cologne, who actually pitched this idea, Alexis Hana and Robert Winfrey, we're going to review Midnight Mass from Netflix. There's an old Everyone Loves a Bad Guy airing on Tuesday. The focus is on the slashers of the horror genre, featuring Michael Myers, but also focusing on Jason Voorhees. We'll have our review of No Time to Die, Monster Magnet, A Better Dystopia, which is their covers album from earlier this year. The aforementioned original 1978 Halloween from John Carpenter will be reviewed by myself and Ronnie Adams, who apparently is a huge Halloween fan. And then Friday, Halloween Kills comes out, like I said before. And then over the weekend, we've got our re-airing of the Long Road to Ruin Evil Dead trilogy. And on Sunday, we will have a re-airing of The Peanuts, one of the last movies put out by Blue Sky Studio before Disney purchased them, and we're lining that up with the release of the actual last to be distributed by or produced by 20th Century Studios / Blue Sky. Ron's Gone Wrong, which will be out Friday the 22nd. Also, Dave and I will be doing an on trial for the original Dune. Dave was like, I'm doing all the Dune stuff. And I was like, so you are, Dave, so you are. So myself and Dave Wright will be doing the original Dune on trial Sunday night, the 17th. Oh, I do know something that you're on. Sean bugged me a ways back and said, hey, man, we gotta redo the Paranormal Activity movies. And I said, how about this? There's actually a new Paranormal Activity movie coming out called Next of Kin, which is day and date exclusively on Paramount Plus. So I was like, hey, why don't you just have a whole segment to yourself? Okay? So Sean is going to basically do a pre-recorded segment, kind of surveying the first 4 Paranormal Activity movies, and we're going to play it live for you on our review instead of a news segment. So it'll be the traditional review from Robert Winfrey and I, then Sean will have his re-say on the first 4 Paranormal Activities, and then we'll do the critical review from Rotten Tomatoes like we always do. So you've got, so if you're looking for more Sean, we've got Donnie Darko, and then his survey of the first 4 Paranormal Activity movies, and that's going to air November 2nd. So normally we would be, I would pitch the Twitch thing. We would have been doing Twitch tonight, but we didn't do video tonight for a variety of reasons. But normally we are streaming on Twitch. We stream on our Facebook pages, The Radulich and Broadcasting, W2M, etc. My personal one. We stream on Twitter, and then everything can be found on W2Mnet.com. All right, that's all my plugs. Go ahead, Sean.
I'm actually on kind of an indefinite hiatus from streaming. I do plan to come back, but between a lot of other behind-the-scenes thing and the fact that I really run out of patience with Twitch when it comes to protecting its marginalized streamers, that's no longer going to be my platform. So when I do come back, it's probably going to be on YouTube. But in the meantime, if you want to hear me rant on horror, wrestling, video games, sharing my DDP yoga journey, hockey season's coming right up, so there will be plenty of Arizona Coyotes joy and tears, strong emphasis on the latter, to go around. Feel free to meet me over there at Comer Codex. You can also find me on the same handle on Instagram as well.
All right, folks, thanks for joining us here on Trial. Case, I haven't done one of these in so long I forgot all my terminology. Case dismissed, court is in recess, blah, blah. Everyone do lunch, smoke if you got them. Be well, be safe, and behave.